In the deep darkness that had engulfed the city as I walked alone, the cold breath of the wind clawed at my neck. When the pale light of the street lamps extended and swallowed the shadows, a sense of unease crept over me. However, the narrow back alleys I had to pass through would lead me home. That night, I didn't know that my dreadful premonitions were about to come true. As I turned a corner, I saw a dark figure approaching me. I quickened my pace, but the figure was closing in at the same speed. I was out of breath, but fear wouldn't release its grip on me. A deep, menacing voice rose from the shadows. "Stop!" I shouted, but my voice only echoed, and the streets were swallowed by silence. For a moment I hesitated. Perhaps I was just imagining things. However, the figure suddenly advanced and grabbed me, and I realized it was real. Its hands were icy cold, sending shivers down my spine. I turned my face towards the figure, but all I could see was darkness beyond. The figure approached me, and I felt its breath on my neck. Trembling with fear, I felt like something was watching me, helplessly engulfed in darkness. Then the figure suddenly disappeared, and the street fell into silence once again. I rubbed my eyes. Maybe it was just a dream, but its effect still lingered. I hurried towards my home, locking the door behind me as I entered. However, I still felt the shadow of that dark figure watching me. I lay in my bed, unable to sleep. Fear continued to echo in my mind like a haunting melody. Finally, as my eyes closed, I felt the icy hands of the figure and vanished into the depths of darkness. The next morning, I decided to investigate what the dark figure really was. I wandered the streets, carefully examining the shadows, but found nothing. However, I knew that the terrifying figure would not leave me alone. As days passed, the fear continued to gnaw at me. Sleepless nights were filled with dark thoughts. Eventually, I felt that I had to follow the figure. Perhaps learning the truth could help me overcome my fear. One night, I gathered my courage and set out into the dark streets. Quietly, I moved through the shadows, expecting an attack at any moment. However, the figure didn't appear again. There was only silence and darkness. After that day, I never saw the terrifying figure again. However, as I wandered the dark streets, I still felt like it was watching me. Maybe it was just a product of a nightmare, but sometimes the truths within the darkness are the most frightening of all. The mystery of the dark figure continued to haunt me. As days passed, I felt its presence at every corner, in every shadow. My rational thoughts told me it was just a simple nightmare or a product of imagination. But the fear within me refused to accept the truth. Every night, I tried to sleep, trembling in my bed. When I closed my eyes, I felt the icy hands of the dark figure, heard its breath on my neck. Fear seemed to follow me like a ghost, ready to emerge from the dark shadows and swallow me at any moment. One day, unable to bear it any longer, I decided to investigate the dark figure. I went to the local library and began searching through old newspaper archives. Hours passed until I found something. A few years ago, the city had experienced a mysterious series of disappearances. None of the missing persons were ever found, and the police investigation led to no results. However, several witnesses claimed to have seen a dark figure wandering around the last known locations of the missing individuals. This information further unsettled me. Perhaps the dark figure was the ghost of the missing persons, and now it was after me. However, I needed more evidence to learn the truth. One night, gathering my courage, I went to the scene of the incidents. As I walked through the streets, I felt like danger was lurking around every corner. But nothing happened. Eventually, I reached the place where it all happened and carefully examined the surroundings. As I moved quietly through the shadows, I suddenly felt a sensation of being watched. I turned my eyes towards the darkness and saw the dark figure standing before me. My heart froze, and I was paralyzed with fear. But upon closer inspection, I realized the figure was actually a human. It wore a black cloak, and its face was slightly visible within the dark shadows. Our eyes locked, and we stared at each other in silence for a while. Finally, the figure spoke. There was a sadness in its voice, a regret, and a helplessness. The story it told deeply affected me. It said that the dark figure wasn't the ghost of a missing person. On the contrary, all the missing persons had been abducted into the city's underworld. This revelation uncovered the horrifying truth. In this dark world beneath the city, people had been turned into shadows, condemned to live as lost souls. And now the doors of this dark world were closing behind me too. Nothing would ever be the same again. Knowing the true nature of the dark figure had changed my life forever. Now, my only hope was to fight against this dark world and save the souls of the lost.